What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we are covering the E92 M3. We are about a year and a half in on the ownership of my M3, and I figured it's probably a good time to do a build breakdown, kind of lead you guys through all of the modifications that I've done on this car so far. Now, we're not going to talk about any of the previous modifications because this car has sort of gone through two different stages, two different iterations of a build. I'm just going to give you guys the updates of everything that I've done on the car at this point as it currently stands. I think that right now this car stands at a really good mix between a trackish club sport style build mixed with a good street setup. Currently, I actually daily drive this car, so you'll notice that it doesn't have things like, you know, a half cage in it or rear seat delete. I tried to keep things as functional as possible for now until I do acquire another car that will become my daily driver, but that doesn't mean that this car could not handle track. As you guys will see in future videos, it certainly can. Well, let's get into the modifications. To kick things off, you guys, anything that I list in this video will be linked down below. I make build sheets for every single car that I build on this channel. Includes products, links, descriptions, prices, videos, everything you need all in one sheet for every car that I build. If you guys are interested in that, I'll have it linked down below for you guys. So let's just start off with the exterior of this car. This car is a 2008 E92 M3. It is manual. It is a single hump. Originally a sunroof car, currently has a carbon fiber roof. We'll talk about that in a minute. The original color of this car is Jerez black. Now, obviously I have it wrapped right now, and it's wrapped in a KPMF titanium silver, matte titanium silver. It looks really good. The original inspiration of this car was kind of mocking after the CRT, which is the E90 lightweight version that BMW released. There's only a few that were ever made. Very, very special car. I was inspired by that, and I sort of wanted to make like an E92 version of that car with my own twist. That is why I went for the matte silver. The CRT version actually comes in a matte silver, but the CRT is more on the silver side. This is more of like a silver slash goldish, but it looks really good in my opinion with everything that I've sort of mixed in. So covering the exterior, we have that KPMF wrap, we have the gloss black kidney grills. However, I might be going back to chrome in the near future because I'm going to change some things on this car, and the chrome I think will work really well. I did that recently on my 1 Series and I love it. It's more classic looking. Nothing wrong with the black, but it's just a different vibe all around. A lot of the black things that you see on the car right now will be changing in the future. Nonetheless, as it sits right now, black kidney grills. This front lip splitter is from Souvenir. It is a GT4 style splitter. I believe this is the version 2 that is the longer one. Nothing too crazy about it. It's a very common splitter for these cars. However, it's not functional, meaning it's not bolted up to the chassis in any sort of way, and that will be changing as well because I want to run a functional splitter on this car. So we'll be changing that out in the future as well. The headlights are completely refreshed. They are the factory headlights. I just sanded them down, wet sanded them, polished them, buffed them, and then cleared them, and they look pretty much brand new. I haven't changed the bulbs out or anything. I used to have the white bulbs in it, went back to the original ones. I just think they look better. A lot of people will disagree with me on that, but that's completely fine. Aside from that, the car is pretty bare. I don't really have any other carbon fiber pieces on the car. Literally right now, that is it. The big elephant in the room, the sunroof is now gone. Lots of people thought I was crazy for removing the sunroof on this car, saying that it was more rare, that it's more special, that it's cooler. I don't really see it that way. I just like the carbon roof better, and that was why I tackled that job. I also wanted to do it myself, and it was a really fun learning experience. We're actually doing a couple more carbon roof swaps in the near future, an M2 competition and an E46 M3. It's really not that bad of a process if you just kind of know what you're doing and you take your time and do it the correct way. But overall, the car lost 45 pounds in the center of the car. People will say that doesn't make a big difference. I think it does. Again, agree to disagree. But the biggest thing about it, why go carbon roof? Well, simply because I just like the way it looks. I think it looks better on this car. Again, that's just a subjective opinion. My build, my rules. So I decided to go ahead and remove the sunroof and go with the carbon roof. 10 out of 10 happy with the job. I would never go back to sunroof. I never used the sunroof in this car, maybe 3 times since I bought it in a year. Just not a sunroof guy. I prefer to have either slick top or carbon roof, but I did find out that a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing that, which is totally fine. You know, you guys don't need to cut out your sunroofs and put carbon roofs on your car, but yeah, I think it turned out really good. If you guys are interested in checking out that entire process, I have the full thing on my YouTube channel. literally start to finish on how I did it. Yeah, dude, it just turned out incredible. Could not ask for a better job. Since we're over on the side, I'm gonna go ahead and go into the interior. I'm actually thinking about, I really like this wrap. I have no intentions of taking it off. I just think it looks fantastic on this car. I think I'm actually gonna wrap the door sills and the jambs and everything just to make it look a little bit more cohesive. I did order more wrap, so I might go ahead and do it. This car actually originally came with the red interior. As you'll see, the entire thing is black now. Also, another thing people might think I'm crazy about, I just wasn't really into the red. I wanted all black. I thought it just looked better, and it's just more my preference. I did the exact same thing on my 135. I removed all the red and I went with all black, and overall it's just my style, my theme, and that's why I went for it, and I think it looks really good. I got the Sportster, Recaro Sportster CSs in this car. I think they suit this car pretty well. These are very comfortable. For like daily driving, they make total sense. I had it my way, you know, once I buy another car and I have another daily driver, I'm gonna probably swap these out for pole positions. I have pole positions in my 135 and I just love them, so probably gonna end up going for those. Steering wheel, this is a custom steering wheel by Aza Auto Wheel. It's a little different, you know, it just has the Alcantara here and leather on the sides. It's pretty simple, nothing too crazy about it. However, I will be changing this out for the JQ Works Mad Trace steering wheel, which I just did in my buddy's car, and I just love the way that that turned out, so I'm gonna end up going that route. Like I said, this is a manual car. It is a single hump, no nav. I just prefer less is more in these cars. I don't really think it makes sense to have a super old iDrive, and I just don't think they look very good. So this was my ideal spec, literally with the carbon roof and single hump and manual. This is exactly what I wanted, and that's kind of why I bought/built it to be this way, and yeah, super happy with it. This says EDC. This car, in fact, does not have EDC. That is just a dummy button there. We'll talk a little bit about suspension in a minute. You'll also see I have the GTS armrest delete. It's basically just an Alcantara piece that covers up what would have been the armrest piece right here. Nice little touch, ties in well with the Alcantara that I have going on. Back seats, ended up getting some black E92 black seats just to kind of tie in the entire interior. I was running without any back seats for a while, but this setup just sort of gives it more of like a street appearance, and it also kills some of the sound that comes in from the exhaust and everything, and the trunk area just makes it a bit more like dailyable. Really like the setup right now. Wouldn't change a thing until I buy another car to daily. I would, you know, most likely move closer towards track and do like a half cage and a rear seat delete. We'll see. Car sitting on Apex VS5 RSs. These are staggered. I am actually going to be switching these up. Being that I'm moving towards, you know, more of a track setup, we're going to be changing this entire setup to a square setup. Now, I don't know if I'm sticking with the VS5 RSs or if I'm going to throw in some E88s or if I'm going to do like the new Apex ML10s, something of that nature, but I am going to go with a square setup on this car. It just makes a ton more sense when it comes to track, and then I can run the same tire size on all four corners and have a really, really good handling car all the way around. I can rotate all my tires. It'll be nice. It'll be a good setup. For street, this is a perfect setup. Nothing wrong with it. I've had these on for, I don't know, like a year now. Love them. Black wheels. Some people hate them. Some people love them. I do think that this car would look nasty with my silver E88s on it. That is something that I'm going to swap out in the future just to see what it looks like. I don't know if I'm going to buy like some Schirmer spec BBS E88s or if I'm just going to wait it out for the ML10s. We'll see. But we have options. While we're over here, I guess we'll talk about the brakes. The brakes are off of the F80 M3. So these are F80 brakes all the way around on all four corners. My brakes were pretty much cooked. The E9X brakes that came with this car were just not in good condition, and I decided to do something a little bit different, a little more OEM. Ended up doing the F80 brakes. I absolutely love them. Like, no issues at all with this brake conversion. I have a full video on my channel on how we did it, but basically the front knuckles are F8X knuckles and then running full F8X brakes. You have to do a little bit of surgery with the speed sensor up front, and the back has caliper brackets in order to run the F8X calipers on the E9X rear hubs. Nonetheless, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Ended up powder coating the brake calipers in like a CCB gold. It's a little bit darker than a CCB gold, but yeah, the gold with this wrap just looks really freaking good. I love that like satin silver goldish color mixed in with gold. I just think it's a really unique setup. Looks really nice. Also, nothing too loud about this car. Like, it's very subtle and a bit under the radar. It doesn't scream, look at me, look at me. That's kind of why I love it. Being that this is a 2008, it is a pre-LCI. You'll see that I have LCI taillights. Ended up getting those from Sencal Motorsports. Those guys are the shit. Love them. They've supported this build big time. Speaking of Sencal, we also have their full titanium exhaust on this car. Really happy with this exhaust setup. It is obviously valved, and so I can open and close it. I ended up doing the double X pipe as well as has the Sport Cats, the 200 cell Sport Cats. Overall, man, I love the way this thing sounds, and being able to control it with the controller so I can open it and close it. It's perfect for what I need this car to be right now. I'm probably going to end up swapping the Sport Cats open for some test pipes, so it's just open all the way through into the resonators. That's going to be more of like the track setup, just have better flow and efficiency, and it is going to be significantly louder when we do that, so I will hang on to my Cats, my Sport Cats. If I want to swap them out someday, I can do that, but just having the ability to do that is worth it to me for like track days or racing or whatever. Again, we do have the black badges, black IND. These are American Panda, black IND M3 badge. However, I'm going to be changing a lot of that stuff out. A lot of the black stuff is going to end up going back to like factory, like the chrome. I just prefer that look. I think it looks better on these cars. My taste has aged a bit as I have aged, and you know how it goes, man. Like, you're older and things, just your opinions and your tastes change, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I guess we could talk about suspension. So this car is currently sitting on the Fortunato 510s. I ended up doing the Swift springs. It's got a 9K spring rate in the front and a 14K in the rear. Really like it. I'm still getting used to it. Just put these on a couple of weeks ago. Literally just got the car aligned this last weekend. We do have a track day coming up, so I was kind of prepping for that. And so I ended up running a negative 3.5 camber up front, and then I also had my buddy who does my alignments to make marks on the camber plates so I can run a negative 2.8 for street, and then I can run a negative 3.5 for track. So currently it's set up on negative 3.5, which makes sense for right now. And then if I want to switch it back, I can just go ahead and move the camber plate, and then it'll be back at negative 2.8, which is like a good, you know, street setup, so you're not cooking your tires all the time. Obviously more camber, you're cooking the inside a little bit more when you're just like street driving. Tire situation's a little funky on this car right now. I have R888s on the rear. I'm kind of like phasing those out, if I'm being honest. They're okay tires, but they're just 20-year-old tire technology. They're loud, they're terrible in the rain, just like not the best if you want to kind of do everything. Recently, I put the Potenza RE71Ss on my BBSs on my 135, and I really liked them. So I ended up getting a set for the front because my front R888s were completely cooked. Throwing some Potenzas on the front made a big difference, and I'm probably going to end up doing the same with the rear. I'm going to try these out, the Potenzas on track. However that goes, I might try the AO52s, the Yokohamas. Both tires I've heard really good things. These are just much better for all around. Like, I can drive in the rain in them and I won't have any issues. They're supposed to last pretty long. They're much stiffer, but overall, like, street driving so far, really enjoy them, especially with the alignment. You'd be surprised what a quality alignment can do for you. Highly recommended, man. If you guys are, you know, big into driving on the twisties and the turns, and maybe even going to the track days on the weekends, like, get yourself a really good alignment. It changes everything. Engine, nothing too crazy. All of the maintenance has been done on this car. I did literally everything. I did rod bearings. I did the uprated throttle actuators by Evolve. It is on a Evolve Stage 2 tune. This car was actually on an Evolve Stage 1 tune for 10 years, and I didn't even know it. Bought the car, ended up flashing over to the Stage 2, and I've had zero issues. It's perfect, man. Like, it feels so good. Outside of doing like a supercharger, I feel like where the power is at right now is really nice in this car. You can use all of the power all of the time. That's a great thing about the E92 E9X platform, is like you can really use the power because it's not too crazy with torque. It's not too crazy with horsepower. It's easily manageable. And once you get up to like 4,000 RPMs, this thing freaking rips, dude. It's so fun, and the car just handles so well. It's just one of my favorite cars that I've ever owned, and I could talk on and on about that, but we're not going to do that in this video. Obviously, Venturi, plenum, and intake. Ended up doing the matte carbon, just be a little bit different. I think it looks freaking awesome in this car. Going with like the matte wrap sort of makes sense. You'll see that my valve covers are actually billet aluminum valve covers by MLT Engineering and Design. Ended up having the same powder coat as the brakes, so we have gold tying into gold, and that's really the only places that you'll see the gold on this car, but I think it's subtle. I think it's clean. I think it looks really good. And yeah, I love the way that it's set up. Turner triple baffled power steering reservoir makes a big difference. Also highly recommended for anyone who's doing like track stuff. Obviously did the rod bearings in this car. My original rod bearings, I mean, they weren't great, but they really weren't bad. The throttle actuators actually were already changed out in this car at one point, but going with the Evolve uprated throttle actuators, they're a lifetime warranty. So if anything goes wrong, I can just swap them out and I get brand new ones right away. So they also have upgraded internals too. So yeah, but so far no issues with that. Ended up doing the Vanos caps by Evolve as well when I did my valve covers. Highly recommend. The factory Vanos caps are plastic. They just crumble. Like, they literally, you can pull them off and they'll just crumble. That is sketchy, obviously, because they are caps in your head, and if they come off and they crumble and they get into your motor, bad day for everybody. Obviously, you don't want to lose a motor over that, but the Evolve ones are direct replacement. You don't have to retime the motor. They are metal and they have 0 failure rate, no problems. Yeah, and I just haven't looked back. They've been fantastic for me. Engine-wise, this does have the Dynon pulley on it, the underdrive pulley kit. That came on the car. I didn't add that myself. And then also, I have a full cooling package by DO88. Fantastic company, you guys. If you're looking to get some different cooling upgrades on your car, highly recommend the guys over at DO88. They are a Swedish company, make really, really good high-end products. All of the cores are larger than like that of CSF, just better stuff all around. So I have their oil cooler, I have their radiator, and I also have their power steering cooler in this car. So this thing is like, dude, cooling wise, this thing is set up. It's really good. Lots of little maintenance things that I've done. Really don't have time to go through all of it. I've made maintenance videos on this car before. As I said, if you guys check out the build sheet down below, you can see there's a list that lists out everything that I've done in maintenance, but pretty much you name it, I've addressed it. This thing is really, really sorted and dialed in. I drive it literally every single day and I've had 0 issues with it. I will say the clutch needs to get replaced. I do have a brand new clutch and a brand new flywheel at the shop. I just haven't had time to do it. I kind of am like in between deciding whether I want to do an upgraded clutch and I want to do like a light and flywheel. And at that time, I'll probably end up going to a carbon drive shaft as well. I know a lot of people are like, don't do that. It's going to create so much NVH. I don't really care. This car is like kind of turning into a track car. So NVH is what it is. I have these street density transmission mounts and the NVH is already a little bit louder. So I'll probably end up going to street density motor mounts as well. So this car will just get louder. You know what I mean? That's just the way it goes when you start doing those types of things in the drivetrain. You get a little more noise, you get a little more diff whine, but you know, ultimately it doesn't annoy me at all. I just love the experience when driving this car, and yeah, it's an absolute blast. All right, North Carolina heat is starting to get to us. It's like 8 a.m. and it's already 90 some degrees. So we're gonna hop in the car, we're gonna go for a drive and talk about some more things with this car that I just absolutely love and appreciate with the modifications that I put on. Let's go for a rip. So this is with the valves open right now. It's not too loud in the cabin. I think that the catalytic converters and the resonators are really doing their job, but that's kind of like why I went for this setup. I didn't want anything too crazy. Then of course you can obviously close the valves and it's like factory basically. You know, it's all intake noise then, or plenum noise. But outside of the car, it sounds really good. So I like this setup. I don't think it's too crazy. I think that it's easy to make these cars just sound like too loud, you know? Like if you just like straight pipe them, they just sound obnoxiously loud. And that's really not my thing. So that's kind of why I've dialed it back. Back in the day, old me 10 years ago would have been like, straight pipe it, make it loud as fuck, dude. But these are different days, so different styles. A lot of people ask me like, do you prefer the manual over the DCT? Man, honestly, I wish I had both because I really like both. I've had an E90 DCT before and I just loved it, dude. I think that these cars with DCT, I think DCT suits them really, really well. Manual is obviously like an entirely different experience when driving it, and being that these cars aren't like the fastest cars in the world, manual sort of makes sense. They're lighter, they're a little bit slower. Manual makes it more engaging and fun. Obviously hydraulic steering, which is nice, so you get a lot of that feedback. It just kind of like plays into that whole thing. However, you know, the DCT is really awesome too, and I think that there's a place for both, certainly, and I wish I owned both. But overall, man, this car, like the way that I have it set up right now is really, really capable, like perfect daily driver. I mean, would you want to be daily driving this car? It's not ideal, being that it's, you know, a higher mileage. I'm coming up on 100,000 miles, E92 M3, but this one in particular it's really well sorted, so it's like there's no issues with daily driving it. It's just that there's more options out there, obviously, that make more sense, like go get like a cheap Toyota or Honda or something with more room in it or whatever. However, no, I love it. I've really had no issues daily driving this thing. The main problem I'm facing now is that, you know, this car really is going to become like my little track toy, so I've been on the hunt for like a really good daily. Honestly, I kind of want to get like a Toyota Tacoma or something like that. Been looking at Tacomas for a while now, and they hold their value. They're pretty reliable. Like, you also get, you know, the bed in the back. I'm always moving parts around from the shop. It's just nice to have that space. So I'll probably end up going in that direction. But yeah, so this car has come a long way, man. I've had it for a year and a half now. When I first bought it, it was in really, really bad condition. I bought it for low 20s, which, you know, in retrospect, it wasn't worth low 20s when I bought it, just because of the overall condition. Like, and you know, I ended up buying it sight unseen. Like, it came in on a trailer, and you know, that's partially my fault. Like, I shouldn't have bought it sight unseen, but I trusted the dealership that was selling it to me, and, you know, whatever. It is what it is. I take responsibility for it. But it was, you know, I guess I could have saved a couple of $1,000s. Ultimately, is it that big of a deal? No. But it needed a lot of work. So drivetrain has completely been sorted through, did all the maintenance, did shift shaft bushings, center support bearings, shift shaft seal, just to make everything feel much tighter in here. The drive shaft, I do need to replace the drive shaft. It's just old and it's just not great. Was starting to make noise. I would like to go with the carbon drive shaft. I think that would be a really good setup in this car. Aside from that, obviously suspension needed to get swapped out. The suspension originally was on like Bilstein shocks and like springs, and it was just completely blown. So it drove like shit. The brakes didn't even work. Brakes hardly worked. Like, it was super dangerous to drive. So that was kind of why I went with like a full like swap to the F8X brakes. You know, that's the F80 brakes it's a really nice, like, simple OEM setup. I think it looks good on this car. It makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, like, longevity, you know, if you're building a track car, like, obviously go with a BBK. But I didn't have the money at the time, and like a BBK is really, really expensive, whereas like a setup like this for the F8X brakes, I was able to get this entire setup done for like under $2,000. You know, everything was used, and I just sourced it, made it happen. But you know, if you want to do it like the big boy way, you obviously go ahead and get yourself like a nice BBK setup. But no issues with this. A little more brake dust, but whatever, you can change out the pads. Yeah, as far as the power stuff, like I said, I really haven't done a whole lot. I don't really think that it's necessary to do a whole lot to these cars. You know, like, the motors aren't like the most bulletproof motors in the world, so I try to keep things rather conservative with this car. I didn't change out the injectors to do E85 or anything of that nature. I just run pump gas on this thing. Who knows what it makes? I should probably throw it on the dyno someday soon here and just see what it is making. But the tune is conservative, stage 2 evolved tune, underdrive pulley from Dynon, intake exhaust, you know, I mean, that's it. Maybe in the future do some sort of header setup, like American Racing headers, I think is a really good setup for these cars. And like I said, some test pipes for track setup, but outside of that, you know, I don't really see myself changing too much on it. I'm really happy with everything. The exhaust sounds really good. I know people are like, oh my god, it's an Alibaba exhaust. Yeah, whatever, dude. They're like all coming from there anyways. Unless you're buying like an Eisenman or a Mach Schnell. I actually had a Mach Schnell in this car before. But I think for the cost and like the weight, I mean, dude, this thing weighs nothing. Like, the titanium exhaust weighs absolutely, it's so light. So for the cost, the quality, the weight, I've had multiple exhausts from, you know, dropship companies like Alibaba, companies like Valtronic, and, you know, not saying that Valtronic is all Alibaba, but we all know how it works, right? So without saying, I'm saying. But I have no problems with the exhaust. It sounds good, looks good, it's functional, it's light, it works, you know what I mean? That is the point. So really happy with it. I think the biggest upgrade for these cars, dude, especially on the interior, the seats, because the E9X and the E8X have terrible seating positions. The factory seats sit really, really high, and you're like up here the whole time, which I just cannot stand. I love being lower. I like having eye level with the driver's hump right here, the instrument cluster. I like that setup. Some people don't like it, but for me, I think it's perfect, and I can just see over the hump on the hood. I don't know, it's just how I prefer to drive my cars. Anytime I sit higher, it just feels really weird. Also, with these seats, you know, you can fit a helmet in here and you'll have no issues. So we got the Sportster CSs in here. You know, in retrospect, probably would have just gone with another set of pole positions. Ended up getting the Sportster CSs first and then a set of pole positions. And I much prefer the pole positions. Most people would argue with me on that. They would say go with the Sportsters, but I would, if it came down to it, I wouldn't even change out the stock ones. I would just keep the stock ones if that was my intention. Maybe, you know, for some bolstering and looks, the Sportsters are better. Seating position's a little bit better. But ultimately, you know, I just really like the pole positions in my 1 Series, and if I had to do it again, I would just buy another set of those. Probably the future of this setup, I will do that. Maybe I'll just save these for a future build or something, because they are nice seats. There's nothing wrong with them. I really like them, but I just prefer the poles better. Single hump, manual, you know, the iDrive in these cars, they're old as heck, man. Like, you can do the updated CarPlay and everything, but I don't really see the need for it. Like, this is a driver's car, man. I don't need a screen in front of me. Like, I have Bluetooth on my phone. I can hook up audio like that way. It's all wireless. That's plenty in these cars. I don't need a big ass ugly screen right here. And I think the majority of people would agree. Like, as these things have aged, the iDrives just look silly. I really like the clean, like, single hump setup. I just think it looks really nice. I remember seeing a lot of like the Shermer builds, and they had that clean, like, single hump setup. I just think it looks so freaking good. It looks so race car, and it's more like my attention is here, not here, you know. But yeah, the overall like feeling of this car, the feedback, manual with the single hump, it's just, dude, it's so good, and it's so fun to drive. You know, being that it is my daily driver right now, like, you also have to remember, like, my version of a daily is different than other people's versions of a daily. I'm at the shop here and there, I'm running errands, but I don't have like a 9 to 5 to go to, so it's not like, you know, I really need like a daily where I'm driving to work and parking in a parking lot type thing. But I do drive it every single day, and the same goes for my 1 Series. I drive that. Sometimes I just switch off and I drive the 1 Series, and that thing is like pole positions, like, you know, E88s, like, it's crazy, single turbo build, like, and I just like to drive these cars. I build them for a reason, man, and it's not to just have them sit in my garage and look pretty. I actually drive my cars. But just because I'm not filming it all the time doesn't mean it isn't happening. People are always like, why don't you ever drive your cars? I'm like, I do, man. I'm always driving my cars. I just don't film it, you know? Just living my life. So these cars are great, man. All the E-Series cars, like, I just really, really love the E-Series cars. I like the F-Series too, but I really love the E-Series cars. That's where my heart is. Like, I want to take old E24s or old E38s and E39s and just completely revitalize them, just give them a new life. Like, that is the shit that I just admire to do in the future, you know, is just have a shop where I can just basically do like restoration builds and things of that nature. Restore the car and then add a little bit of feng shui on top, just a little bit of my own flavor on the top. But yeah, overall, this car has treated me super good, man. I bought it with, I think it had like 95,000 miles on it, maybe a little bit less. In the year and a half, I've probably put like 6,000 miles on it or so, maybe a little less than that. But outside of doing like regular maintenance, you know, this thing's like never left me stranded. It's always been a reliable car. Like, I've really gone out of my way to just nip things in the butt prior to that happening. Just taking that like preventative approach, I think, is like the really big thing with these cars. But as far as like modifications, you know, I had like a carbon trunk on the car. I had like side skirt extensions. I had all this stuff going on, and I was like, this is too much. Like, I don't need all this. I had like a rear seat delete and everything. Again, too much for the car, especially for like what it's being used for right now. I put the rear seats, I got some black E92 rear seats, put those in. Like the sound and everything is so much better, you know, like you're not hearing the road all the time. And that will also make a big difference when I swap out the rear tires. Our 888s, man, loud tires. And they're also, you have to remember, like those Toyos that's 20-year-old tire technology. Tires have come a long way in 20 years. So kind of have to remember that when buying tires. I truly think that these Bridgestone Potenza RE71s are just killer, man. Like they're great. I put them on my 135 and I was like, yeah, these are the way to go. And then, you know, also I heard good things about the Yoko A052s. Those are the next ones that I really want to try. So, but yeah, I don't really see too many things like changing for this car in the future. At this point, I'm just more about driving it. I have some different brake pads that I'm going to be running by G-Lock. They are the R10 compounds. Definitely a track setup, so they're going to squeal, they're going to be loud, but they're going to bite much better. And then I obviously am swapping out the, I'm doing some high temp brake fluid here. All this is happening this week, so I can get ready for the track this weekend. And then I also have the H&R front and rear sway bars on this car. And really, you know, outside of some simple things that I've done to the arms and suspension and bushings, I'm going to be doing some work on the rear subframe, kind of going through that and doing like the full SPL or Turner catalog, swapping out the arms, swapping out the bushings, solid subframe bushings, stuff of that nature. Yeah, it drives good though, man. So yeah, negative 3.5 up front, and it's, dude, camber, when applied properly, makes such a big difference. I was running like -3 on the car, unbeknownst to me. Like I just did the coilover install and I just kind of set it to whatever it was at. Obviously I wasn't going to know without getting alignment, but so we ended up setting it to 3.5. And you know, if you're gonna street drive the car all the time, I'd probably go back to like the -2.8. But for -3.5, man, this setup's perfect. It's going to be perfect for like mountains or track or anything of that nature. You're just getting so much more tire contact with that type of camber in the front, and it feels really good. The rear camber, I believe we're set at -2. Don't really know how much further I can go in the rear. I would have to change some things up in terms of like arms and all of that to be able to control the camber. But yeah, overall, I mean, that's it. Oh, I have the ultimate clutch pedal. The ultimate clutch pedal is incredible, you guys. Like if you don't have that in your manual car, your manual E-Series or F-Series car, highly recommend you check out the ultimate clutch pedal. I've made a couple of videos on it, and yeah, it makes a huge impact, more than you might think. So 10 out of 10 would recommend that as well. But outside of that, man, this thing is pretty simple. I would like to get that JQ steering wheel. Someone on my ass. I mean, you can't be mad at the way that this car sounds, dude. Like it just, there's just nothing like it, and it's really the thing that, you know, that keeps me hanging on to this car. Like the way that it drives and the way that it sounds is just, it's unlike anything else. Too good. All right, guys, so that wraps this one up. Tell me what you think about the E92 M3. It's really nothing too crazy, man. Like there's been a lot of parts that I've thrown on this car and taken off this car. You know, like I have a wing at home. I have 2 different trunks that I swap out. The wing is not really for street. That's why it's not on the car right now. You know, I don't really rock that thing on the street. I try not to. If I have a track day coming up, which I do, I'll end up throwing the wing back on. I'm also building out some plates for that wing to make it much more rigid and structural. But nonetheless, you know, I've had like carbon fiber side skirt extensions, things like that. I just took that stuff off. I just feel like at this point, like less is more on these cars. And now that I'm getting into actually driving this car more and more, I don't want a ton of things on the exterior. I just want it to look like real simple and clean. Kind of the motto for the majority of my builds, especially as I've gotten older. Less has always been more. I keep them just very basic and very clean looking. Try to do the majority of the wrenching and the money spending on the performance, the handling, the braking, suspension, the tires, things of that nature, because that really, when it comes down to driving these cars, that's what matters. Nonetheless, like I said, if you guys are interested in all of the modifications or all the maintenance stuff, I'll have it linked down below in the downloadable build sheet. If there's anything that you guys wanted to see that I didn't cover, comment down below. I can try and cover it for you guys, but I will see you guys in the next video.